The Mets were well on their way to a dramatic comeback win in the first game post-trade deadline, and then Carlos Mendoza took the bat out of Mark Vientos' hands. Did Mendoza blow the game? Also, Luis Angel Acuna got sent down. Did the Mets make the right call there? I'll talk about all of that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I'm covering the New York Mets on this show for the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Well, there's something about the first game after an active trade deadline. It really does feel like a whole new vibe, a whole new energy, especially with that game taking place at Citi Field. You are meeting all these new players who are talking to the media at the first time. You're, anxious to see Cedric Mullins first at bat, Ryan Helsley to come out of the bullpen to Hell's Bells, to see Tyler Rogers with that funky delivery in a Mets uniform. It was a really exciting game, one that you just sort of sit down and grab the popcorn and are ready to tune in to see if the Mets can start to grab some momentum that'll carry them all the way through this stretch run. And the game ultimately ended up being a little bit of a letdown, for one, because the lineup didn't hit for the first 6 innings, and for two, because there was a dramatic comeback that they were right on the verge of, and it seems like they just let it slip through their fingers. And honestly, I'm going to blame Carlos Mendoza for this one, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's start off at the beginning of this game. David Peterson continues to just be as solid as they come. Another quality start. Really only had one bad inning where he issued a leadoff walk, gave him a base hit, then a double, scored one, a ground out, scored another. In that inning, he gave up 2 of the 4 hits he would allow the whole game, 1 of the 2 walks. Altogether, he gives up 4 hits, 2 earned runs in that inning, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. Was solid. Kept the Mets in the game. Ryan Stanek came on in the 7th inning, which makes sense. I saw a couple people quibbling about that decision. Look, you're losing at that point. You have not scored a run. If you can't pitch Ryan Stanek when you're trailing 2-0, you can't pitch him at all. So they put Stanek out there, gets up a couple of doubles, another run comes across. The Mets are trailing 3-0 going into the bottom of the 7th inning. Now, through the first 6 innings, the Mets could not score, and Tyrone Taylor's spot in the lineup just kept coming up. And I know that fans were not happy that Cedric Mullins was not in the starting lineup. We have our subtexters, our Locked On Mets insiders, and I was getting a ton of text messages when we sent out that lineup graphic today. No Mullins? Where's Mullins? Where's Mullins at? Why isn't Mullins in the lineup? Why is Tyrone Taylor still out there? I get the frustration, but it sounds like Cedric Mullins had a tough travel day just getting to the ballpark. And at that point, when he shows up a little bit late, doesn't have the time to do his typical pregame routine, not to mention he's meeting 100 people. He's never been traded before. We'll talk about the new guys and how they're going to fit in a little bit more in the next segment, but kind of jarring, right, to go to a new team for the first time. So I had no issues with the starting lineup. Sure, if you wanted to quibble, you could say, all right, well, why not just stick Jeff McNeil back out in center field for a game? And you could have played Beatty or Mauricio against Robbie Ray, but Robbie Ray is very tough on left-handed hitters, and Ronnie Mauricio has not swung the bat well from the right side. So I get it. Tyrone Taylor, though, does end up coming up empty in a couple of big spots. The first one in the 3rd inning, Jeff McNeil, who continues to walk at an exorbitant rate. He drew a leadoff walk. Luis Torrens struck out. And then Tyrone Taylor hits into a double play ball. But honestly, kind of bad luck. He hit one very hard up the middle, about 100 miles per hour off the bat. Just a great play by Willie Adames, who gets there in the hole, fields it, backhanded flip, and they turn 2. Really tough double play turn. The only reason why they turned the double play is because it hit the ball so hard. So that's a rough break for Taylor. 5th inning, you have Mark Vientos and Luis Torrens each get hits in that inning. So Taylor comes up with 2 on, 2 out, hits a weak ground ball. 7th inning, the Mets again trailing 3-0. Pete Alonso hits a leadoff homer to get them on the board, his 23rd of the season. Rico Garcia puts up a 0 in the 8th. Bottom of the 8th inning, the Mets rally. Now, here's where I would make a little bit of a suggestion. 8th inning, you're down 3-1. Maybe let Cedric Mullins bat for Tyrone Taylor there. I will give Mendoza some flack in that instance. I understand there's nobody on, but come on. At that point, they could have got Mullins in the game. Instead, they give Tyrone Taylor another at-bat. He flies out. But Brandon Nimmo draws a walk. Francisco Lindor gets a base hit. Juan Soto rips one off of Joey Lucchese's foot, which scores the second run for the Mets. And then here comes Jose Butto out of the Giants bullpen. Butto, who got a tribute video before the game, comes on with a runner at first, a runner at third, one out, and he's got to face his former teammate, Pete Alonso. Pete said that he had those spring training live ABs that he tried to roll his mind back to against Butto to figure out what he was going to do against him. He ends up hitting a deep fly ball to drive in the tying run. So game's tied, it's reset, and Jose Butto looks like he's crumbling on the mound. He's attempting pickoffs when there's nobody to cover second base. He's nowhere near the strike zone. The Mets have Ronnie Mauricio pinch hit for Starling Marte, which was a good call by Carlos Mendoza. I got that one. Ronnie's been hot. He's been clutch lately. Stick him out there, see what's going to happen. Juan Soto's still second, so now you got runners at second and third, and Butto can't throw a strike. Mauricio takes his walk. You got bases loaded. Mark Vientos is coming up with a chance to completely flip the script with one swing. He hit a home run, 5 days ago now, whatever it was. The perfect opportunity for Vientos to continue what has been a recent turnaround where he's swinging the bat much better. He clearly has found his confidence again. And what does Carlos Mendoza do? He says, let's play left on right with the guy that notoriously has completely even splits. Well, maybe he didn't know the pitcher. Jose Butto has had his entire MLB career basically in front of Carlos Mendoza. Why did he think, I got to grab a lefty here? I just have to, because Jose Butto's best pitch is a changeup, which plays really well against left-handed bats. Yeah, let's get a lefty in there. Let's do that. His changeup and his two-seam are really going to be tough on the lefties. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised. I know I looked it up for this season, and the splits were negligible. It was pretty much, if anything, a little bit reverse splits. I mean, against lefties this year, it is a batting average against of 239 for lefties, 257 for righties. So there you go. And the home run that he gave up this year, actually is getting up one apiece. If you go to last year, a lot of time pitching in front of Carlos Mendoza, lefties hit 118 against Jose Butto. Righties, 213. So what's Carlos Mendoza on? And I usually am not the guy that criticizes the manager, but that was egregious. And I feel like everybody knew it. I feel like even Jose Butto knew it. He's like, oh, thank you. I'd love to face Brett Beatty right now and throw him a two-seam and let him hit a ground ball and get me out of this inning. And that's exactly what happened. And you saw Vientos was pissed going to the dugout, and rightfully so. Look, I get playing matchups. I get wanting to get everybody involved. I get that the Mets are going to be aggressive with their bench, and they should be. But Mark Vientos has been swinging a good bat. If you want Brett Beatty in for defense for the final couple of innings, why don't you let Mark Vientos get a base hit first, and then he can run for him? How about that? Brutal. The Mets lost the game in that decision, in my opinion. Now, look, Vientos could have come up and strike out, and then, it is what it is. But he was the one in the lineup. He's the one with the 10-game hitting streak. And Brett Beatty's last 7 games, he's 2 for 21. Granted, that includes this at bat. But 2 for 21, a 0.95 average, 7 strikeouts. It doesn't make sense. It was a horrific managerial decision. And again, I'm not the guy that criticizes the managers on this show often. Okay, I've been doing it every day all season. This might be the second or third time that I've really gone in on Carlos Mendoza, but it was that bad of a decision. Now, after that, we were all treated to a light show. Ryan Helsley comes on. We get to see Hell's Bells at Citi Field for the first time with the new lighting package. And he was lighting up the radar gun too. He's unbelievable. He's electric. We've seen it before with him in a Cardinals uniform, but it's a little bit different with him, wearing a Mets jersey, going out there, throwing 100, 101. Those are the first 3 pitches, 3-pitch strikeout, hit 100 or higher 8 times in the inning, grabbed a a couple of 101s, picked up 3 strikeouts around a few singles. Ryan Helsley is going to be an unbelievable addition. We're going to talk about those guys a little bit more in the next segment. Now, the Mets went down in order in the bottom half of the 9th. Edwin Diaz comes on and tries to strain that ghost runner. The 10th could not do so. A ground out advanced the runner to third. And then Dom Smith came up with an infield drawn in. He hit a ground ball at the middle of the Lindor, just could not get to, and that scored the game-winning run. Diaz was able to limit the damage to just that one run. So all the Mets had to do was get their ghost run in to extend the game, or ghost runner in to extend the game. And Rainy Rodriguez was able to put the Mets down. Lindor got hit by a pitch. Pete Alonso drew a 2-out walk, but Nimmo and Soto each got out. Ronnie Mauricio had a chance with the bases loaded, had a pretty bad at-bat. He looked at the first pitch, was sort of taking all the way, and I think Rodriguez sort of noted that, and he just poured in 3 fastballs after that. The first 2, Mauricio couldn't get the bat off his shoulder. Again, he was sort of prescribed to take at that point, and that's not a way. Look, he's been much better with his discipline. The improvements he's made at the big league level this year have been really impressive, but there's still an at-bat here or there where you remember this guy just didn't have a ton of MLB experience, and in that instance, it was not the best of at-bats, and he strikes out. Swing at least, but Randy Rodriguez grabbed a couple extra miles per hour and blew 100 past him, and the Mets end up losing, leaving the bases loaded. Rough loss for the Mets, a game they absolutely could have won. I still believe that if Mark Vientos gets to hit in that spot, he's at least getting a single, and the Mets win that game, and it's this awesome, dramatic win with the Citi Field packed crowd coming out of the deadline. Ryan Helsley maybe still pitches. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe if the Mets had a lead, they would have still gone to Edwin instead of Helsley, but man, Helsley was electric. We're going to talk about the next segment is how those new additions are going to fit in with this team, and I'll also touch on the roster move today, Luis Angel Acuna getting sent down to Syracuse. So we'll go through all that here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Time to fuel up, time to turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I was feeling it this week at the trade deadline. All the work I was doing, 5-Hour Energy helped me stay energized and focused. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. I'd love to get there by the end of the season. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so let's talk about the new additions to the Mets roster. We got to meet Cedric Mullins, Ryan Helsley, and Tyler Rogers today. They all spoke to the media. None of them was super eccentric. None of them is a real character like Jesse Winker sort of was last year, where you're thinking, okay, this is a guy that's going to bring a little something extra to the clubhouse. But they also all seem to be very low-key guys that'll fit in pretty seamlessly. I think one of the interesting notes that somebody brought up throughout all of that today was the fact that all of these guys have been with the same organization their entire career. I think that's a testament to good guys because, and granted, talented players too, because organization's not going to give up on too many talented players, but also you can get traded. And I think some of the guys that are able to put in 10 years with an organization, that's typically indicative of someone who is good to work with behind the scenes. And so you have Ryan Helsley, who was drafted in the 5th round in 2015, Cedric Mullins drafted in the 13th round in 2015. Both of them were with their teams for 11 years. And then Tyler Rogers drafted in the 10th round in 2012. So that is 13 years in the organization, or 14 seasons, whatever, however you want to look at it. But all those guys more than a decade with their respective teams. And so they're all sort of going through this sort of crazy reality shift where now they're playing for a new organization for the first time. And that can go either way, but I feel like these are guys that should be able to fit in really nicely. I'll be curious how Cedric Mullins deals with the pressure of being the big bat added and the new starting fielder of the New York Mets at the deadline. How is he going to rise to the occasion, or maybe not, with the pressure of being that deadline addition? I'm not really too worried about Helsley. We just watched it. He looked great. I'm not that concerned about Rogers. I mean, what he does, the way he throws from that slot and how effective he's been with that, I just don't know if that really changes. And well, your game doesn't change too much as a pitcher, particularly a relief pitcher. Like, yes, it's a different team. It's a different jersey. It might be a little bit of a different role, but it's ultimately your arsenal against the hitters, and things aren't too different. Now, you could tell it's still the same game for Mullins too, but he was very comfortable in Baltimore. He was maybe the longest tenured guy there. He had a fan base that knew him, that loved him, that watched him become an all-star and all these things. And now you're trying to make a first impression every single night with this new franchise in a big market. He's been playing in Baltimore his entire career. I really don't know how that's going to go. I honestly don't. I don't know if it's going to be incredible. And this guy, as I talked about on one of the shows that I've done over the past few days here, but once the Mets made the trade, I believe I talked about it. He put on a show in his final series at Camden Yards and has gotten some big hits throughout his career. He has been in some big moments. He's played in playoff games. So I don't want to sell this guy. He can't do it. And I think he can. I think he can and will have some really huge plays for this team, whether that's some big hits here or there, or if it's making a big defensive play. He's going to make an impact. But I still don't know how much of an impact that's going to be. Is he going to be the guy he's been in July, where he might flirt with hitting closer to 280 to 300 and pop some home runs and steal some bases and do his thing? Or is he going to be the guy that had a sub 600 OPS for 2 months in the middle of this season? It can go any which way with Cedric Mullins. But I'm excited to see him get out there. I'm excited to see him starting instead of Tyrone Taylor. And honestly, I think this is good for Tyrone too. He's been playing more than he probably should, or definitely more than he should this season. He's a fourth outfielder, and he's been miscast as the starting center fielder since Harrison Bader struggled down the stretch last year. That's not the role that he's best served for. Now he's going to be in a role that's a lot better suited to his talents, defensive replacement late, pinch running. That's basically what he's going to do, and I would hope that he almost does get an at-bat for a while because, for one, they've been pretty bad, but also I think if he was able to get 10 days out of the starting lineup and just not have to feel that pressure, not basically forget how bad he's been, maybe that'll reset and you can get back to seeing some of those better at-bats, because there has been points in Tyrone Taylor's tenure with the Mets where he has given you a good professional at-bat for stretches. Just hasn't been that way lately. So it's going to be really good to see Mullins get out there, and that's going to be an upgrade. I guess it's the only question is going to be how much of an upgrade is going to be offensively compared to Jeff McNeil in center field, and what you might be losing. Not going to lose anything in the infield with McNeil, but you're not going to be able to get one of those young guys in there, which leads me to the big roster move that the Mets made. They had to option a player. It was either going to be Mauricio or Acuna. I talked you all through the different options during the deadline when we were getting into the hypothetical of what the Mets might do. I was looking at the situation and sort of forecasting Mauricio being the one sent down, just because it would allow the Mets to play Beatty, to play Vientos, to play McNeil, to play Mullins or whatever center fielder they were going to acquire for a month. Let Mauricio play every day in Syracuse. And I felt like there was still a few things he could work on down there, particularly his right-handed swing and just playing more third base. Then he could come up in September and pick up where he left off, essentially. But then on yesterday's show, yesterday's show, as you guys are listening to this, the morning show on Friday, I sort of changed my tune on that because I looked more and more at Mauricio's numbers. And against right-handed pitching, he's got before this at bat, but he had a 910 OPS. I understand that he had earned it. And I also, when I was able to really think about it, was able to follow the Mets' logic that they would be able to get all these guys playing time because essentially you're not going to play Tyrone Taylor anymore. So with all that said, the best move was to relegate the guy that wasn't playing much anyway and that is Acuna. So he'll go down, play shortstop, play all over the place in Syracuse for the next month, probably get some more time out in center field to just add that to the toolkit, and then he'll be the September call-up, and then we'll see what happens when it comes to a playoff roster with what the Mets will do. Also, of course, you might get a Winker or a Jose Siri off the IL in September, and maybe those guys end up being the last piece that gets added for the September call-up when you expand the roster to 28. But for now, this is the Mets team, and here's the great thing. You got a lot of bats in this lineup. It's just about how do you fit them all in there. You know that first base, shortstop, left field, right field, those positions are filled with everyday guys. Catcher, you know the split. Alvarez is going to play most games, and then you have Terens. Obviously, Terens was in there because Alvy took one off the head in his last game, so they're just giving him another couple days to just get himself right. I think he'll probably be in there on Saturday. But what this comes down to is second base, third base, DH, center field. Across a 6-game stretch in a given week, you got 24 starts to divvy up between McNeil, Mauricio, Beatty, Vientos, Mullins, and Marte. And that's with Tyrone Taylor just being relegated to the bench and not in the starting lineup at all. So with those 6 guys, how do you split up the playing time? Well, I really think that Mullins should be playing almost every day. Say 5 out of every 6 games in a given week. Maybe you give him a day off. McNeil, I think, can grab that start in center. 4 out of 6 starts at second base. That's the way I would have it lined up. So you'd have Mullins and McNeil playing 5 out of every 6 games. That takes 10 of those 24 starts away. So now you got 14 starts to be divvied up between Marte, Beatty, Vientos, and Mauricio. Maybe only 2 available at second base. Those would go to Beatty. You got third base and DH for those other 3 guys. Well, really for Mauricio and Vientos, and Marte's only going to DH. Now, I think Marte probably DHs against the lefties, right? So let's just say you face 2 in a given week. That's 2 starts to Starling Marte. Maybe a start per series. You see Marte out there. All right, well, now you got 12 starts for Beatty, Mauricio, and Vientos. Already said 2 at second base can go to Beatty. He can start 2 at third. Ronnie Mauricio, maybe he starts all 4 of his games at third. Maybe there's a given game where you decide to put Beatty at third, McNeil at second, and you DH Mauricio with Vientos on the bench. I think that's a lineup we will see. And then you have Vientos, who, the way he's swinging it lately, it's getting to the point where I want to see him out there most days. But I understand when you have Mauricio on the roster, you got to juggle playing time. And so for now, if Mark Vientos gets 4 starts a week and a couple of key at-bats off the bench in those other games, he's still getting ample playing time. And you know what? If Vientos takes this 10-game hitting streak and extends it to a 15-game hitting streak and leaves the yard a couple more times, he's going to make it tougher and tougher to not write his name on the lineup card. It's going to make it impossible, I would hope, to get pinch hit for in a big spot late, which is still an absolutely disgusting decision by Carlos Mendoza that will keep me up a little bit tonight. So, yeah. But I think it makes sense how this roster has come together where you can probably get each of those young guys 2 starts in a given series if you are selective about giving Mullins a day here, giving McNeil a day here. Also, you don't have to play Nimmo every single day. I think you can be, creative with benching him every once in a while too. Soto, Alonso, Lindor, they're going to be out there every single game, and rightfully so. But the Mets can find a way to get all these guys playing time. And the reality is that the best part about this, it's good to have a deep team. And if there's 13 guys on this roster right now, I look at it and say Tyrone Taylor is the only complete L offensively where you just don't expect him to do much. Terens has been swinging a little bit better lately. We know Alvarez can certainly be inconsistent, but he looks more dangerous in the box, and it is what it is with your catcher situation. But if you set the catchers aside, you should have 8 good bats in the lineup for every given game, honestly, and 2 on the bench. You have 10 hitters that I feel like can be real difference makers down the stretch. And that's a really exciting thing for this team. So, yes, do the Mets have to swing the bats a little bit better offensively? Absolutely. They're in a 4-game losing streak. They have not hit well throughout it. But I think they have the best to do it, and I think the best is still yet to come for this team. I want to preview the final 2 games of this series. We're going to get to all of that here in just a minute. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks from the match. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways ain't a line graphics sent your phone each day so he knows in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the rest of this series. Mets have a huge pitching advantage in this game today. You got Kodai Senga on the mound trying to bounce back after a couple of not so great starts. And for the Giants, you have Kei Tang. Now, Tang has a 9.82 ERA from last year. That's his career ERA. He was a rookie last season, pitched in 11 innings, so still probably technically a rookie. He'll make his first MLB appearance of the season in this start. Spent the year in AAA where he was largely pitching out of the bullpen, but did get stretched out a little bit recently. He's had a 3.67 ERA across 54 innings pitched all year. Again, recently got stretched out, made a couple starts. He was up to 84 pitches on July 13th. He then had a relief appearance on July 25th in AAA. I don't know what happened in the middle there. And again, if I'm not mistaken, he has not pitched this year. So I don't know if he got hurt. I don't know what happened. I will say the guy has actually kind of a surprising amount of strikeouts in the minors this year, 86 strikeouts and 54 innings pitched. So maybe he's got a little bit better stuff than you might expect, kind of a wild card in this one, but also a guy with very limited MLB experience, and he's going up against Kodai Senga. So the Mets have a huge edge. They should win this game, hopefully, knock on wood, but you'd imagine that the Mets would be able to hit Tang, I'd hope. And then we'll see what happens in the final game where you're going up against a top pitching prospect, Carson Whisenhunt, second-round pick for the Giants in 2022, a top 10 prospect in their organization still. 18 starts in AAA this year, 4.42 ERA and 97 and 2/3 innings pitched. He did make a start this year, gave up 4 runs in 5 innings pitched. So that is the road ahead here. Going to be, again, Kodai Senga versus Kei Tang, and then you have Carson Whisenhunt versus Frankie Montas. Montas did not pitch against the Giants in that series in San Francisco, so it'll be his first time facing them in a Mets jersey. But you got to like the Mets' chances on a couple of inexperienced big league starting pitchers to hopefully do the veteran thing with their lineup, take good quality at bats, get into that underbelly of the Giants bullpen, which is a lot weaker with Tyler Rogers switching sides. And, of course, Camilo Doval getting sent to the Yankees. By the way, if you feel bad as a Mets fan, don't. Because the Yankees, I mean, if you didn't see what happened, watch it. It'll make you feel a little bit better. There was some that were saying, oh, the Yankees did better than the Mets at the trade deadline because they got 3 pitchers with control coming out of their bullpen. I actually spent a ton of time. I was up until, I don't even want to. Let's just say the sun rose before I went to sleep last night as I was writing for Just Baseball our biggest winners and losers of the buyers at the trade deadline. So I ranked 5 from each, 5 winners, 5 losers. And this was just amongst the teams that bought. I wasn't looking at sellers and I wasn't looking at prospects. I didn't care about prospects for the article. The whole premise was which teams got better, which teams are ready to win in a significantly different way than they would have been if they didn't make these moves at the deadline. Who really improved? And let me pull up the article so I can make sure I'm accurate. But I believe my number 5 team was not the Blues, it was the Phillies, because the Phillies got obviously Duran and Bader. The Blue Jays were my honorable mention. I thought they did a good job at the deadline picking up Shane Bieber. I was talking about the Mets picking him up. I love that upside play. Shane Bieber might be starting game 1 in a playoff series if he comes back and is the guy that he was. And mind you, he's been striking out about 50% of the batters that he's facing on his rehab assignment. Minor league hitters, but showing you the stuff is still there. So I like their deadline. They also got Sir Anthony Dominguez and Louis Varland, as well as Ty France. France really isn't much of anything, but they got a lot of pitching. The Phillies did a good job. Then I put the Yankees at number 4 because they made a lot of additions. David Bednar, Jake Bird, Camilo Doval, 3 pitchers with control going into their bullpen. For Bednar, 1.5 years, for Doval, 2.5 years, and for Bird, 3.5 years. They picked up a new third base platoon, Ryan McMahon and Ahmed Rosario, and they also got a utility man in Jose Caballero, and they picked up Austin Slater. So they did a lot. They added 7 players at this deadline. That's 26% of your active roster. Number 3, I had the Mets, although I really wanted to push them above the Mariners, but I don't make these rankings entirely on my own, and I had to fight off that Mets homer bias, and so I was back and forth, and ultimately the other editors agreed that would go Mariners because they added really the 2 best bats at this deadline with Eugenio Suarez and Josh Naylor, and picked up a good lefty reliever as well. The Padres were number 1 for all the crazy stuff they did. Mason Miller, JP Sears, Nestor Cortez. They got 2 starting pitchers at a deadline. We're not allowed to move. They got a lights-out closer with 4.5 years of control, a starting catcher, a starting left fielder, and Ramon Laureano. The starting catcher is Freddie Fermin. Not a great catcher, but an upgrade over what they had. They got Ryan O'Hearn, and they got a utility man in Will Wagner. O'Hearn will probably be their new DH. So the Padres were number 1. Just to rattle off the 5 losers list, I got the article pulled up here. The Dodgers, an honorable mention for not doing much other than picking up Alex Call. The Reds, Brian Hayes and Zach Littell. Couple of additions, but they certainly could have done much, much more. The Tigers did a lot, but I don't think any of the moves they made will have much of an impact come October. Outside of maybe Charlie Morton, if he stays on the recent heater he's been on. Kyle Finnegan, not the best reliever you could have picked up at the deadline. Paul Sewald, Rafael Montero, they were good 3 years ago. Chris Paddock, a decent back-end starter. Next, I had the Brewers as a big loser, although granted, they did some sneaky stuff, pulling off a Shelby Miller trade by taking Jordan Montgomery's contract at the 11th hour. And Danny Jansen's a local kid that might play better in Milwaukee as a backup catcher. So I didn't hate what they did, but they had the chance to push the chips in with a great farm system and actually be the favorite in the National League. They didn't do that. The Cubs didn't either. They were number 2 on my list. Picked up Willie Castro, which was their best move. And then Andrew Kittredge and Taylor Rogers, decent relievers, but not a closer. And they needed one. And Mike Soroka is all they got for the rotation, which was not enough. And then the Red Sox were the biggest loser. Dustin May and Steven Matz, a brutal deadline. Not to mention, they traded the prospect they got in the Devers trade, the headliner, to get Dustin May, who's a rental, not having a good season. So that was the trade deadline stuff. But anyway, getting back to what led me down that rabbit hole, the Yankees were beating the Marlins 6-0. Carlos Rodon had a bit of a blow-up, gave up 4 runs. They scored 3 more in the 7th. So they're winning 9-4. And that new bullpen they put together absolutely melted down. You had Jake Bird give up 4. You had Bednar give up 2. And then Camilo Doval gave up 1 as the Marlins walked it off on a ground ball that barely got away from the catcher. But Xavier Edwards flew in and scored on the contact play. And the Marlins won 13-12. They're 2 games under 500, the Marlins. And the Yankees lost in miserable fashion. Your 3 bullpen additions give up 7 runs on 9 hits and 2 walks. That is awful. So if you feel bad about the Mets rallying back, tying the game, getting to see Ryan Helsley pitch in a tie game, and then losing because the ghost runner came in extras, think about your friends who are Yankees fans and know that it could be so very much worse. Hopefully the New York Mets can win this series, rally back, and pick up the final 2 games of it with some pitching matchups that are in their favor. So we'll be following along. I'll have another show for you tomorrow, breaking down whatever happens in the game. And we'll always sort of keep our eye towards the minor leagues. Haven't been able to do much of that lately. So I'll be curious to maybe pull that out for a segment on tomorrow's show as well. If you are listening on the audio side, make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. Thank you all for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every single day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that covers everything, the world of sports, with our local experts from each team, league-wide experts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.